Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 175 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So if you're watching online, you're saying, "Whoa, this isn't Josh's normal office. He's on a different microphone too." If you're really observant, you see you see the new mic. If you're really observant and you're just listening, maybe you say the same thing. You're like, "Yeah, this dude, his sound usually sucks, and now it sounds decent today." Well, that's because I am sitting in Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu Studios 2.0 and recording. Really, I did one episode while I was working on the room, but this is the first episode that I have recorded here. Intro, outro, everything in person. I'm sitting in a real chair. I'm not holding a microphone in my hand, and I'm actually using some of the equipment that we'll be using in here. I'm not using I should be actually using a different camera, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We're still working in here. It's not finished, but it was ready to do a solo episode, at least with the new mics, the new audio interface. And so if my sound sucks, I'm sorry. I actually just had a meltdown. I recorded like this whole hour episode, and then usually I'll record the intros and outros after, because sometimes the episode, it changes. What I planned to talk about doesn't actually happen. And so then if I have an intro where I'm telling you, "Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about all this stuff," and I don't do it, well, it's not good. You guys will recognize that I am a liar. And so trying not to lie to you guys. But what happened to me earlier today, I recorded this hour episode, and first time ever using the new audio interface, first time ever using the new mics, and went to press play on the episode that I recorded, and I had no sound. And I had just talked for an hour staring at my camera, and it's literally just like, unless you could read lips, the episode was useless. But luckily, it turned out I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just stupid, and so I just didn't know how to actually play the episode. So we're good. We got the audio. We got it all. That would have been a loss. We would have chalked that up to a loss, and I would have had to learn from it after I, cried about it for a little bit. And yeah, that's what we talk about today, is how to lose better, and then how to lose so well that you never actually lose again. So this episode has a lot going on. I talk about some of the best Josh McKinney heartbreak, some of the worst beatings that I have ever taken on the competition mat. I actually talk about some beatings I've taken even in the gym too. A lot of beatings, man, a lot of losing. I always say this, but I really stand by it. I am so glad I did not name this show the I'm Great at Jiu-Jitsu show. It's just like, there's not much that you have to live up to be the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show guy. You just gotta keep showing up. That's really the theme of the show, is just keep showing up. Just be consistent, and eventually you'll be good. And that is, that's the theme of the show. And this episode is no different. Really talk about how to stay in, how to be more consistent, how to redefine what losing even is, and how to learn from basically every loss that you may take in jiu-jitsu. And so without further ado, I think we could just go ahead and jump right into this episode. What if losing was impossible? Obviously, in jiu-jitsu, it is just not possible to not lose. Every single person that we've ever seen, even on the highest level of competition, has found someone who can beat them. It happens eventually, and nobody walks out on the mat day one and simply doesn't lose. And so today we are going to be looking at the three different points on kind of losing better, getting more value out of losing. And we're going to talk specifically about some of my favorite losses, some of at least the most inspirational losses that I have ever taken. And we'll maybe even link some YouTube videos for you guys to watch and experience those losses with me. But let's go ahead and just kind of dive in to this episode. I think the best place to start, if we are going to talk about the importance of losing, and this is a perfect episode if you're discouraged. If you've been getting beaten down in the gym, maybe just as the beginning of your jiu-jitsu journey, or maybe you're further down. Maybe you're a purple belt, a brown belt, a black belt, and you are getting frustrated in the gym because you keep losing to white and blue belts. Maybe that is what's going on for you. But I really think that one of the best places to look at this episode is just kind of to start with, what are some benefits to losing in jiu-jitsu? I actually gave this example last week, but I thought it would be a perfect place to start because the quote is just great. And since I gave the example last week, it's fresh on my mind. But I talked about an episode, I think it was in the 30s, episode number 30 something, where I interview Huron Gracie. And for me, it was like one of the first big, it was actually what I would consider the first big interview that I did on the show. I was just so excited about it. I remember it was in the height of COVID, and me and my dad were driving, me and actually my whole family, me, my wife, my dad, and my mom. We were driving to go stay with some of our family and kind of be on lockdown together. And so while we were driving, my dad and I knew that this podcast was coming up, and we started to just listen to Huron and listen to Huron and listen to Huron. And eventually, I came up with some good questions to ask him. But my favorite part in the episode, and I told you guys this last week, was the point in the episode where I asked Huron, how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu? And his answer was more about how you look at losing than anything. It really wasn't this answer on, oh, if you add these techniques, or if you train this way, or if you do this or that. It was really how you looked at losing. Because if I suck at jiu-jitsu, if that is what you're saying, most likely you're saying that because you were losing. And his advice was, what if you stopped looking at losing in a round in jiu-jitsu, and you stopped looking at it like, oh crap, I lost. When I win, I'm so excited because jiu-jitsu works. But he said, when you lose, you should also be excited that jiu-jitsu works. It obviously didn't work for you. It worked against you. But there is something that you could learn in that circumstance. And his advice was to be more curious. What if you get your back taken and you get choked? Well, what should you do? Instead of being like, oh, I suck, I'm frustrated, I'm mad that I got choked, you can change your perspective. You can say, wow, that choke was interesting. Maybe I'll even let it happen again. And this time I'll pay a little more attention to some of the fights that I lost on the way. Maybe I pay attention to, well, what if I tried this escape? And then you lose again. And then you try it the next time. And you keep doing this over and over. And what starts to happen eventually is not that you start winning, but really you stop losing that way. Eventually, if you apply this to all the ways that you lose, you will stop losing. If you stop losing, and then you start to add some offense into your jiu-jitsu, add some pressure, add some dominant position, add something offensive to your jiu-jitsu, then you will start winning. And so just by kind of redefining and looking at, okay, I'm not just doing jiu-jitsu to win. I'm doing jiu-jitsu to learn. And a big part of learning jiu-jitsu is getting beat up, is losing, is actually that drive home that you're discouraged and you're talking to yourself, and your self-talk is not positive, and you are struggling with the fact that you got beat up, maybe by people that you shouldn't have gotten beat up by, in your opinion. Or maybe you didn't perform well yourself that day in training, and maybe it really was people that you normally wouldn't lose to. And when you deal with that discouragement, when you start to sit in that discouragement and not let it define you. Learn to then move on to the next day, learn to move on to the next training session and come in with your good attitude, with your learner's mindset. What starts to happen is you start to change. Your way of looking at losses starts to change. I know for me personally, doing jujitsu for a long period of time, I've done jujitsu for like 15 years. I think it'll be 15 years in like a month or two. But I've done jujitsu for a very long time. And what happened a lot of the time when I first came into jujitsu, I was starting off 14 years old training with adults. I was losing a lot. I was probably losing more in the gym than anybody else was at the time, right? I really didn't even, for the first year of training, I really didn't even approach rounds with the mindset that, oh, I'm going to beat this guy. Most of the time, I was just approaching rounds like, okay, let's see what happens because this is fun. I never get to win, but I enjoy it. I'm having fun doing this. And what started to happen is the ways that I would lose that way a million times, right? Because I was going with adults that were all also pretty brand new. And so when you're in that phase of jujitsu, we always kind of talk about like how white belts can kind of get a little crazy and how white belts can be a little reckless. That was no different in 2008 when I started jujitsu and I was training with a room full of white belts. I was a white belt myself. It was the Wild West. You really were just trying to get good. But something interesting happened in this time for me, and it really did kind of change my perspective on losing. It kind of changed everything for me. There was this guy when I was first starting, and he was by far and away better than all of us that were starting. He was also brand new. He wasn't, I mean, he probably trained some, but he was also very new to the art, but he was substantially better than all of us. It really wasn't close. He beat everybody in the gym. It was very apparent that he was better. Then one day something interesting happened. One day we got a new guy that came into the gym, and this guy came with some more experience. And he came and he beat our current king of the white belts. I think they were both white belts too. But this guy was just better. This new guy was just better. And so the old king, what he did was he stopped coming. He couldn't handle losing. He had won so definitively against all of us. And that idea of being a big fish in a small pond, it started to kind of rear its head. He started to get addicted to not losing. We're addicted to winning, addicted to domination, addicted to whatever. But he was not able to handle losing. And keep in mind, these are my first couple of years of training. This isn't something that happened over a long period of time. This guy wasn't a purple belt that didn't know how to lose. He was a white belt, right? And what ended up happening is this old king, the guy that used to be the king, he took off like a year of training. Okay. It just fell out of love with it. He did not like the fact that he couldn't win. And then something crazy happened. He came back. And when he came back, I was 15 years old still. I was still a kid. I was still way smaller than this person. I was still way less athletic than this person. But I had sat for the last year losing almost every round. Towards the end of the year, maybe the first 9 months, losing every round. But then all of a sudden, something started to click. The fact that I was in high school and I would just freaking leave school and just go train, that was helpful too. But not being afraid to lose because I was a kid that lost all the time. What started to happen is I started to find some victories. We started to get some new guys in that maybe were a little bit smaller than me or a little closer to my size, closer to my age, but they hadn't been training for a year. And so I started to learn how to win. And so then a year later, when the guy that I'm referring to as our old king, he came back. He and I had a round, and it was absolutely to the death. It was tooth and nail, as hard of a round as I had had at the time, and I beat him. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't dominant. It was a war of attrition. I think we probably were rolling after class, and there wasn't even a time limit. And I was able to outlast, and I was able to get a finish. And when that happened, something amazing happened. The old king quit permanently. He couldn't handle losing. And that idea of, well, I lost, I quit, it reared its head again. And because that first time he accepted that losing was this terrible thing, that losing was this thing that you had to avoid, and the only way to avoid it was to not show up, it prevented him from winning in the future. So when we talk about the importance of understanding that losing is not a bad thing, another way that you could explain this is that there was a time for me in my training that I stopped losing. I was a purple belt, and I had my own school. And so a lot of my training is now with my students. I'm also starting to get a lot better at jiu-jitsu. And I'm able to compete really well with most black belts at the time. I'm starting to feel really good. And I started to run into this problem. And it was that basically the only time I was ever losing was in competition. In the gym, on the mats, just wasn't losing. Was it the fact that I just like was that much better? Or was it the fact that I was starting to create a game in jiu-jitsu that was built more around me not losing at the gym? Because like looking back now, I know that that is what was happening. But one of the best things that could have happened to me at that time was I started losing again. In the gym, I found someone, actually a few someones, who could beat me consistently. Funny little side note on that. This was actually like one of the big reasons that my gym got the competition notoriety, really grew as a competitive gym the way that it did. It was actually based on a lie. And so I'll tell you guys what that lie is. So when I was just starting out, I maybe had my gym for a year. Me and Adam Marburger, who you guys have met, he's been on the show before. I'll have to get him on again. He's been incredibly busy since the last time he was on the show. And so I'll have to get him on again, and he can tell you guys about what he's been doing. But anyway, he and I were running a t-shirt company together, and it was called Head Nod Squad. And so at that time, we were kind of sponsoring some athletes. We had some different guys that we were sponsoring, and we were kind of using this whole t-shirt company as a way to get better at jiu-jitsu, as a way to get access to better training, kind of what I use the podcast for, get access to more people and get better training. And then what we did was one day we have kind of a good group of black belts from the area, and we lied to them all. And we said, hey, these two black belts from these other gyms that you never get to train with, they're going to be at my gym on Thursday morning. And then I went to those other two black belts and I said, hey, these other guys are going to be at my gym on Thursday morning. And then I went to fourth and fifth black belt. Hey, these guys, they're all planning on coming in and training on Thursday morning. If you guys want to come in and train, it should be good training. And then out of the luckiest draw ever, all those guys showed up at the same time. They all showed up on the same day, and they all had this thought of like, oh, okay, this is the place to train on Thursday mornings. We could all do an open mat and train on Thursday mornings. And this is really where I got close to Nick Sanders, who's now we're on the same team. We weren't on the same team at the time. It was very true cross training. There was a bunch of guys representing a bunch of different teams, and we were cross training. But in this group of people, there was another person who's also been on the show. Shoot, I have interviewed every one of my friends, I guess, at this point. But I had Ezra Lennon, and he was at the time, I think he had just come back from competing at ADCC, and like he got invited to compete at ADCC. So this is like the level of guy that I'm getting to train with now. And he's not only at that level, he's about 10 pounds heavier than me. He's a better athlete. He's faster. He is just, to me, he was just so much better than I was. And I went from not being able to find someone to beat me to now having a few different guys, especially like Ezra was beating me badly as a purple belt, and into brown belts, he was beating me down. It was so amazing too, because even when I would start to get better at something and I would get close to him on one day with this specific technique or from a specific position, the next week it wouldn't work. The next week he would go back to the drawing board and he would figure out a way to beat it. And what happened for me in that time was that was one of the, if not the biggest jiu-jitsu growth that I ever got. And we had 2 days a week that we were all meeting up, and we're basically just showing up and doing live rounds. We weren't drilling. We weren't doing positional sparring. We weren't doing anything like that. It was show up because this is, at the time, it was the best guys in the area. And we were just trying to get better together. And what happened with me is every time that Ezra would beat me, every time that Nick would beat me, every time any of these guys would beat me, it gave me something to work. It gave me something to focus on and to focus like growing towards. Because what happens in jiu-jitsu so much is when you stop losing, when you get good enough to start being the best guy in your gym, it starts to become addicting. You start to say, not only do I not want to lose anymore, but I can't lose. It is bad if I lose. And let me tell you, that is the worst mindset to get in jiu-jitsu, because once you get to that peak, and I've been there in different gyms at different times in my life where I was by far and away the best guy, at least besides, of course, like my coach, right? But I was his best guy. And it would actually cause huge plateaus in my training. Now, I think that there are ways that if you are the best person in your gym, that you can get better. And if that's something that is asked about enough, I could do an episode on that. But I don't think that that's something that a lot of people that listen to the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show probably run into. But what I mean, what I'm kind of aiming at, what I'm kind of looking at, is just making sure that you understand that not only is losing just part of learning jiu-jitsu, but if you didn't lose, if you had a situation where you no longer could lose, it becomes so much harder to get better, because what the heck are you going to work on? How are you going to work it? These guys can't challenge you enough to beat you in these ideas and these, in these positions. Quick little side note, something that's really helpful if this is something you are experiencing and we don't do a whole episode on it. Positional sparring will help you so much if you are that guy in the gym, or if you're a coach and you just don't, all your students really can't challenge you enough. If you do enough specific positional sparring, what kind of happens is, maybe we positional spar De La Hiva, and maybe I can pass you every single time really easily. And we do like 2 days in a row of doing it, like 30 minutes each day. By like day 3, you will start to stifle me from De La Hiva guard. You will start to beat my passes just naturally. Even if I just move to the next one and still pass you, you will start to increase way faster than if we were just letting your De La Hiva guard organically increase. And so basically in that scenario, though, of positional sparring, we would be saying, hey, you're going to lose until you stop losing. Because once you stop losing, now you're challenging me in this position. In this one part of jiu-jitsu where we have a very defined beginning position and defined end, okay, first score or first submission from here. Or if we get out of De La Hiva, then we'll reset and we'll just go right back in the same position, right? When we do that, we get this like, we talk about it as like this video game training room where we're just playing one little piece of the video game. And though I'm losing a million times, it's not a big deal, because both of our job is to get better at this piece of the video game, right? If we think about it as jiu-jitsu as a team sport, it's so we can get better at this video game. So then when we go to the competition, that we can win at the competition, right? We can win this little part of the fight because we've practiced it enough. And really, because we've lost enough and had a good attitude towards losing. So now let's look at just the idea of kind of analyzing why you lose. So like the first bit of this podcast has really just been how important it is to consistently lose, whether that means once a month, whether that means once every couple weeks. If that's all the losing that you could do, that's okay. But for most people listening, they're like, yeah, I lose indefinitely. I lose a million times. I lose every single round, every single night. And so for you, I think the analyzing of those weak points is going to be harder, right? Somebody who only loses once a week, maybe loses a round or two a week, it's kind of easy for them to analyze if they choose to, as long as they're not afraid of losing. It's pretty easy for them to analyze what happened, because you can say, okay, there's 2 5-minute rounds that something went really wrong in. And you can just ask yourself, what were the things that went really wrong? Okay, I got my guard passed with a knee cut. Do I know how to defend the knee cut? I really don't have a good way to defend it. This is kind of what I normally do. So what do? I'll positional spar from bottom knee cut. I'll watch some instructionals, watch some YouTube videos, get a private lesson on beating the knee cut, on defending against the knee cut. And then a few weeks later, hopefully, if I focus on it, I will stop losing to the knee cut, right? But again, this is if you're not losing a lot, if the volume of your losses is just not huge. What if you're losing every round? What if every single person that you go with is beating you? And it's one of those things where you're like, man, I don't even know where to start when it comes to analyzing my losing. I would start from the end. We always talk about beginning with the end in mind on the show, but also that same idea applies to the thought of like reverse engineer. Okay. Let's say every single round you seem to get swept or get your guard passed. They go from side control, then they go to mount, then you belly down, and then they choke you. Okay. And maybe they're hitting knee cuts, Toriando passes on you. Maybe from side control, they're threatening different things to make you belly down differently. But regardless, most of your rounds end with you having someone on your back and then you getting submitted. That is losing most of the time. And that's the very final point of losing most of the time. There's always been this quote unquote joke, but it's very true. Some people still use it too. And then I use it just to be mean to my students. But there's this old saying, like, how do I get out of a triangle? You don't get there. How do I get out of a rear naked choke when somebody's on my back? You don't get there, right? Yes, that is absolutely true. And that's just kind of this thought on having more layers to your game of jiu-jitsu. Eventually, we'll do an episode on what that means, on what layers of your jiu-jitsu games, building your jiu-jitsu cake. Man, I've just been coming up with great titles of episodes. Honestly, every time I do a new title on the show, I was like, this couldn't get worse. This title couldn't be any worse. This is the stupidest thing I've ever come up with. And then the next week, I do something even better, even dumber, like The Loser's Guide to Never Losing Again. What a terrible name for an episode. But if you're listening, hey, at least it got you to click, right? But let's say that you keep losing and the way that you're getting your back taken is different. But I think it's better to start from that last point, right? Start from, what if I could let somebody get my back and I could just defend the rear naked choke? What if I could let somebody get on my back and I could just defend the bow and arrow choke, right? How do I do that? Well, one, you start to say, well, how does he set up the rear naked choke? It always ends with him trapping my arm, or begins with him trapping my arm. So how do I prevent my arm from getting trapped? And maybe that's my focus. And maybe that's my focus for a few weeks and a few months. And maybe I'm even going, okay, I don't I'm letting people take my back because I need work on this. And since I know how valuable losing can be, I am not going to kind of get caught up and get frustrated with myself because I'm losing. I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to lose from this position as many times as it takes to stop losing from this position. And you positional spar and you get with a partner and maybe have them go with just a little bit of energy. Maybe they're not going super hard, and you just keep doing little bits and little bits more to stop losing so much. And eventually you get to a point, and this takes years for a lot of people to do, but eventually you get to a point where you get your back taken and your mind goes, oh, thank God, a place I can survive. Oh my gosh, oof, I would have lost if he put me anywhere else, but I know how to defend the back. And so by analyzing your loss and just starting from the most basic part of it, the very end, this is how I am losing, then what you can do is you can get so much better, so much faster. So now let's look at, and just those are just a few simple tips on analyzing losses. You can always ask somebody that beats you a lot, hey, what am I doing wrong here? I would say don't ask somebody who you just trained with like once or twice. If you were asking somebody, hey, what am I doing wrong? Are there any big holes in my game? It's very hard to, even for me, I'm very analytical. I'm very good at analyzing other people's games and helping them. But in one round, I really can't do it. In like 10 rounds, I could really give you some big pointers. I could say, oh, yeah, you don't win the first grip fight ever. You never even attempt to win the disconnected grip fight. And maybe you'll say, well, I don't even know what that is. And right there, we just got some really great questions from me beating you up. We just got some really great thoughts to explore, some things for you to hopefully pay for a private lesson with me, and we can figure out how to be better, figure out how to stop losing that way. And so I think those are kind of just the simple thoughts on analyzing. First, we talked about the benefits of losing. Then we talked about analyzing how you're losing. And now let's talk about the real reason that you guys clicked on this episode. And that is that I'm going to give you the secret to never lose again. Because remember, this is the loser's guide to never losing again. And I will give you guys that secret right after the commercial break. Hey guys, Josh McKinney here. Really quick, just wanted to give you an update on something that we have going on at simplifyingjujitsu.com right now. The 3 lenses, our free ebook, is totally free, and it is still available right now. Eventually, I think within the next month, I don't have an exact date, but once it has been out for a year, I will do the same thing I did with the Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu ebook, and I will take it down. And so at this point, if you are wanting to understand the 3 lenses, these are the 3 places that people will tend, the 3 perspectives that people will tend to look through in order to learn jiu-jitsu. And there are 3 different ones. They are 3 totally different ways of training and 3 different ways of learning jiu-jitsu. You will find out which way fits you best, and then what little practices and details you can steal from the other 2 lenses to help you be a more well-rounded, a more better grappler. Obviously, don't spell check me on this ebook. Don't check my grammar on this ebook. It's not the strongest, but the content is very, very good. There's also, I think these probably should have been separated into 2 different ebooks. But there's also a lot of definition about a lot of different terms that we talk about on the show and are just talked about in the jiu-jitsu space. And it's, I don't even remember, probably like 30, 40 plus different definitions of different training methods, different things that we talk about all the time in the jiu-jitsu world. And it'll give you a little more context, a little more understanding of what people mean when they are using these specific words and these specific training methods and why they are using these specific training methods. And so if that is interesting to you, all you need to do is go to simplifyingjujitsu.com/3 3. That is simplifyingjujitsu.com/the number 3. Again, this is the 3 lenses ebook. It is completely free for the next month or so. I'll give you guys an exact date when it stops being free, probably next week. But yeah, that's all I have for you. Let's go ahead and jump right back into the episode. All right, guys, we are back and looking at how to never lose again, looking at how to be unlosable. That doesn't make sense. Unbeatable? Yeah, let's say unbeatable. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at how to do this. Okay, so I think back the first time I ever kind of had this thought was with a conversation with one of my students, one of my old students, Carl. I think Carl still trains. He better still be training, but he had to move. And so there's a point. Carl was older, and at the time in our gym, there weren't a lot of older guys. And so he was probably the oldest guy there, or one of the oldest guys. He was very new. He was still competitive. He still wanted to be the same young athlete that he used to be, but it really wasn't in the cards. And we were just having a conversation of losing. And she had one of the funniest lines about losing that I've ever heard. One time we were talking, and this was that conversation. He's just like, man, I'm tired of getting beat up. He's like, I really, he's like, that big guy that's been training. I'm like, oh yeah, he's super tough. And Carl tells me, yeah, I got him down and I got past his guard and I got into mount and I went for an arm bar and I missed it. And then he got on top and he got me in a head and arm choke. And as I'm getting ready to tap, he goes, I'm just thinking, Carl, you're an idiot. This guy's bigger than you. He's stronger than you. He probably makes more money than you do. His wife is probably prettier than yours is. And that was an exact quote. And he's just going through the list of the same list that Adam Sandler goes through in Happy Gilmore, where he's like, I'm stupid, you're smart, I'm not very good looking, you're incredibly attractive. When he's giving that to Chubbs, that's what was playing in Carl's head as he was losing. And he's telling me this. Of course, I'm just laughing at this analogy that he gave. But then we just continued to talk about it. And I really think that for him and for most people, that redefining what losing even is and what winning even is in the gym will help you so much as you progress in jiu-jitsu. What I mean by that, what I mean by redefining what winning is, when you go into a round, maybe most of us, we say, if I submit this person, I win. If he submits me, I lose. If I submit him more times than he submits me, I win, vice versa. I lose. Or even if I score on him, I win. If I have more points than he does at the end of the round, I win. Those are really the ways that basically everybody in jiu-jitsu thinks of winning and losing. Something that you can do, and this needs to be internal. This isn't something you tell somebody, oh, I was just working on not getting submitted. So you didn't actually beat me, even though you scored 700 points on me and put full body weight on me for 10 minutes and I am gassed and you're not, right? You don't do it like that, right? You're not trying to redefine losing to make yourself feel better. You redefine losing so that every round winning is inevitable for you. So what I mean by that is, instead of maybe, hey, the win has to be submit this guy. What if this guy passes me with a leg weave pass every single week? And it's been happening for 6 months. And so maybe my redefinition of winning and losing for this week is going to be, if I can keep him from leg weave passing me, that's a win for me, right? Because if I try to focus on, well, this guy always leg weave passes me, he gets me in mount, and then he cross collar chokes me, and he does it every single time. Then when I'm on top, he sweeps me, and then leg weave passes me, mounts me, and then cross collar chokes me. If I try to go with, well, I need to submit this guy to get the win, instead of giving myself something really attainable Then what happens is I'm not thinking about the fact that he passes me every time. I'm not thinking about the fact that he sweeps me with the same thing every time, that he submits me with the same thing every time. I am only thinking about, did I submit him or did I not? But when I redefine and I say, this round, this week, this month, this year is about not getting past with this leg we've passed because it's happening to me too much. I can totally redefine what winning even is. And I can lose and still get submitted in the round. But with that different perspective, at the end of the round, I have this easy pass fail that I can say, did I get leg weave passed or did I not? Because if I did, well, I still have things to work on. I still lost, of course. But if I didn't, that's progression. That's a win. Our friend Chewy always talks about, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so if my elephant is the purple belt who beats me down every single day, I'm not going to beat him by just saying, okay, well, I listened to an episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Now I'm going to be able to submit this guy. No, you got to buy private lessons from Josh McKinney to do that, and my instructionals and stuff. And when it's live, Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu Pro, which you guys don't know about yet, but I'll tell you about it eventually. But instead, you say, this guy beats me this way. What if I just prevent that for right now? What if I just prevent that? Maybe one day I learned how to beat that, but for right now, I just prevent it. What happens is I am able to, in small bites every single day, be focused on getting better. And that is like what losing does so well for you, is it defines on whether or not you are getting better, depending on how you are defining what losing is. If you define losing as getting submitted, it's a little too broad, right? Maybe you're at a point where all you're trying to do is, you're getting submitted maybe twice a class, and you're like, if I could eliminate those two submissions, that would be huge for me, right? But again, we broke that down into a smaller, more attainable goal versus like, okay, well, I'm getting submitted. I need to submit people more, right? That's not very defined. That's not very attainable. So when we're looking at making losing impossible, the best way to do that is to have little things that like redefine what winning and losing is. And then also the second way to make losing impossible is to focus on skill development. If I'm going into a round at my gym and my goal is to get better at guard retention, and maybe I got passed twice, but I spent most of the round retaining my guard. I spent most of the round keeping the person in my guard. Guess what skill I just helped myself develop? My guard retention, my open guard retention. Maybe I could play that if if we looked at the opposite side of the coin and we said, well, what would somebody who doesn't lose well do? Maybe they would say, I'm just not going to play bottom with this person. He can pass me. I'm just not going to play bottom, right? And you end up not losing, but you're not focused on developing skills. You're not focused on getting better. If you're not focused on getting better, eventually losing is going to come to you. Eventually losing is going to find you if you are not focused on developing your skills, right? And so that's something that you will see, a habit that the best grapplers tend to have, is that they are so willing to lose. They're so willing to fight people where they're good at in the training room. It's different as we compete, right? As we compete, you kind of have to, you're focused on winning. You should be. If you're going into a tournament, that's probably why you signed up. But something we've talked about on the show many times, and this is something that I have practiced forever, is when I go into a competition, yes, I am absolutely focused on winning. But most every competition I go to, I also have an unlosable side experiment going. For example, I had some injuries in 2021, but I was still competing through them. And I recognized that with the level of competition that I was fighting and a lot of the guys that I was having matches with, that maybe winning wasn't always going to be in the cards. And I was gonna obviously I was gonna be there to win. I was gonna focus on winning, but I could kind of tell where I was at physically, where I needed to be at physically to deal with the people I was fighting. And what I did was I said, okay, well, what are the other skills involved in jujitsu competition? How could I be better at those? How can I make sure that I'm really hitting those? So then when I'm healthy, I didn't just waste the time saying, well, I'm not really healthy. I couldn't win this match anyway, whatever. And just use that as an excuse. Instead, I said, okay, well, I'm not 100% healthy. I believe in myself. I'm going to focus on my belief. I'm going to focus on my warm up, right? Maybe my warm up has not been perfect. Maybe I can define, maybe I can figure out over these next 3 tournaments over the next 2 months. Maybe I can figure out like the perfect warm up for myself. And now I'm at a point, this is 2 years later, that I don't even think much about my warm up. That used to be this like point of contention in my mind. How should I be warming up? What should I be doing? But I was able to pull out some really awesome concepts about warming up and when it's important and why it's important and why sometimes maybe it's not. I have a few experiences where I for different reasons didn't warm up for tournaments or warmed up very differently than I normally do. But I only was able to have that information because I went into these tournaments. And these are adult black belt tournaments. These are important tournaments. These are YouTube videos that are going to be on YouTube forever of me who's trying to build a name in the jiu-jitsu space losing, right? But I didn't care because I was getting value out of those matches, regardless of if I was going to win or lose. Maybe I was trying to add a new position. Maybe I was just trying to add a new position in jujitsu competition because competition is just different than it is in the gym, right? When you sweep somebody in competition, they will fight to the death to get back to their feet before you score your points. When you sweep somebody in the gym, most of the time, they'll just accept the sweep. They'll just say, okay, now it's my turn to play guard. That doesn't happen near as much in the competition. And so saying, okay, well, if I'm going to be a guard player, I need to learn to play guard in competition. I need to learn to play top in competition. If I'm going to be a top player, maybe I'm doing really good in the gym playing top, but I need to start to apply that to actual competitive matches. And so redefining how you lose or redefining what losing is, what winning is, and then also putting stipulations that make you be able to get value out of winning, losing, regardless. Just get value out of whatever experience it is, right? When I go to a seminar, I don't really look at it the same way I used to. I used to go in hoping that someone was going to show this new entire game that was going to blow everyone's mind. It was going to help me be so much better at grappling. But now when I go in, I say, if I can get one good detail, this seminar is worth it to me because finding a good detail as a black belt is hard. Finding something new to add into your game that you will actually use is hard. And so I redefined how I'm looking at the seminar. And it's not about, oh, this seminar is good or bad. It's, can I get one detail? Usually I get that one detail because that's my new focus. I get that one detail in like the first 5 or 10 minutes. I get that one detail when the whoever the person is talking about mindset or they're talking about how they think about the same exact move that I already do, right? And I get that detail and it's so helpful because I didn't just live in this performance-based pass-fail mindset that we kind of tend to push towards jujitsu because winning and losing is generally pretty easily defined in jujitsu. Did you get submitted or did you not? Right? That's what most of us would consider winning and losing. And so by redefining, by adding those little skills to develop, you will get better. And then the third thing to understand about losing is losing should inspire you. That is how to never lose again. If you let losing inspire you. So I'll give a few examples. One, probably this was probably more technical. I'll give a technical example. I had, I don't even know what year it was. I had two matches with a guy named Yago Souza. If you guys don't know who that is, to me, I've grappled a ton of like big name grapplers. To me, I thought that he was probably the best guy I've competed against. He was pretty unbelievably good. Uh, but there were a few little hand positions that he was creating, a few ways he was posting that were different. There were a few ways that he was approaching my guard that were different. And I had, even in the match, they were negative thoughts. Oh my gosh, this is the best way to explain this thought that I had with Yago. Was there was this point in the match where I said to myself, this guy is so close to me. It is unbelievable. This guy is so close to me from my guard, right? From my best positions. He was just so much closer than other people usually are. He was doing the same everything else was about the same. He did hit this crazy back take that ended up on the IBJJF's homepage for a bit. That wasn't the same. That wasn't something I had ever seen before. But everything else, they were simple things. But I could feel that he was too close to me. And once we were done with that match, actually, it was the second time that we grappled. I went home and I was like, there's something there. His closeness was doing something. But then there were times that I would start to get something and then he would run away. And if you guys have been to, I teach anything. I'll teach seminars about anything, but really the seminar that people like for me to teach is my seminar on distance management from top and bottom and explaining the distances of guard passing. And for me, a lot of that definition, a lot of those understandings of the distances came specifically from the 6 minutes that I played bottom with Yago, probably 10 minutes total. But I got inspired. He beat me up. I lost. I didn't get the place that I wanted to at this tournament, but it inspired me. It made me say, wow, there is something there. Another really good example, and this is kind of on that same context, that same concept, was at brown belt. I fought Hanato Canuto. If you guys don't know who he is, also incredibly good. It probably has one of the best matches ever with Gary Tonin at ADCC 3 years ago. And so there was this point, though, when I grappled him. And I remember coming off the mat after he just obliterated me, man. It was my first match as a brown belt. He had just won worlds at brown belt. And so it was it was my first tournament. Sorry, my first tournament as a brown belt. I had one match before. But it was a very welcome to brown belt type feeling. Man, he was thrashing me. But what was interesting is when I came off the mat, what I said was, wow, that was like trying to grasp smoke. It was like I just couldn't touch him. He was always an inch out of reach, except for when I would overreach. And then again, just like with Yago, he was so close to me. And this is really where I got the concepts, the ideas of what's one of the most listened to episodes on the show ever, the episode on blitzing, right? The episode on the blitz and the prevent. That was kind of how I defined what he did to me in that match. Again, though, it was the same thing. I took this loss and I let it inspire me. I didn't get frustrated by it. I lost to somebody. Both of those guys that I named, they were better than me. You could watch the matches. You go, yeah. Those guys were freaking better than you, Josh. You didn't look very good in those, right? And I could let that discourage me, or I could grow from it. I can let that make me a better grappler. I could say, wow, I need to steal this stuff. This is good stuff that they just did to me. How do I steal it? How do I do it? How do I conceptualize what was happening in those matches, right? There was a point where I even had some of my students, they went and got a private lesson from Hanato, and I was like, hey, don't don't mention my name, but ask him about basically what I explained to you guys in blitzing and preventing. I just want to know how he explained it, how he understood it, because he was so good at it. He was so good at running away or running towards me. And that for me was this one of the most valuable 7 minute beatings that I've ever taken. There was actually a point in the match, and there's a picture. There's a picture of I don't remember which photographer got it, but there's a picture of me laughing. I'm on top in close guard. I literally am laughing. And it was because in the first like 2 or 3 minutes, he like ran from me, ran from me, ran for me. And then he began to blitz me and then blitz me and then blitz me again. And from there, I was down. I like he got to my back. He hit me with a trip to pass to mount to back take. Like probably a 20-second span. But the first minute of the match was me chasing him, me chasing him. Like this freaking guy won't engage. And then all of a sudden he did, and he blitzed me. And I was so behind on the blitz, he just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. And I get out. He actually hits me with an armbar, and I get out of it. Deep submission to defense. We should talk about that at the very end of this episode. But I get out of it and I end up on top in close guard. And I look up at the score and it's 15-0. In like I said, that all those 15 points happened in like a 30-second window. And I just laughed. I was like, holy cow, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this situation. And it really made me understand the importance of offense and defense. And really, it made me understand pacing so much better in a jiu-jitsu match. And I've used that to win so many more matches than I probably would have because I had never gotten to experience it. And so that is on that note of losing. Make sure that you let losing inspire you. If you let losing inspire you, you never really lose. When people say you either win or you learn, that isn't true. You could easily lose and not let it inspire you. You could easily lose and say, I will do everything I can to avoid this situation by not showing up to train again, or not training with that person who beat me, or not playing the position against this person who beat me, right? But instead, you get inspired by it and you say, wow, this person just beat me from a position that I thought I was good at. I wonder how I could get better at it. Maybe I'll ask them. Maybe I'll say, hey, how did you pass my guard there? And that, just that little bit, a lot of times is helpful enough. It will make you go, oh, well, I won't let that happen anymore. I won't let you pass my guard that way anymore. But that being said, okay, sure. I'll talk about one last loss since you guys are just loving hearing about me losing. You guys are jerks. So this would have been my second match as a black belt. I fought Murillo Santana. And man, if you don't know these names that I've dropped, just know these guys are really skilled. Don't get all sad like, man, Josh sucks. I mean, I do, but don't get sad about it. You know, these are top 10, top 5 guys, right? Especially at the times that I'm fighting them. And holy cow, they were good. But there's this point where I have a match going with Murillo, and he was so smooth in the match. It was unbelievable. And then there's a point where he gets me in a triangle. And for me, he was probably better than me at every single position at that time. You know, at the stand up, at the top, at bottom, he's just better than me. He just was a better competitor. He, and was probably just better at jiu-jitsu than I was. But there was a point where he got me in a triangle. And this is something that I have focused on and really, really tried to get good at defending. Tried to get good at like, hey, I don't want to get triangled. This is a position that's easy to catch, but if I have a really high level triangle escapes and defense, even if somebody catches me, it's not a death sentence. And I always believed that. But this is the first time I ever actually got to experiment with it with an incredibly high level grappler, right? And he had me in a triangle for like, I'd have to rewatch the match, but I swear to you, it was like 4 minutes. I really do think I was probably going a little bit in and out at points. When I got out of the triangle, I finally like looked up at my guys and I was like, hey, where are we, guys? Why am I fighting this guy right now? And so, I ended up still losing the match, but it gave me a chance because I wasn't afraid to lose to the triangle and gym. If you're afraid to lose to the triangle and gym, you won't positional spar triangle defense. You won't positional spar. Hey, I'm going to have you start with your ankles crossed behind my neck. I'll have one arm in, one arm out, and then we'll work the triangle from here. Or even you start deeper in the triangle with the legs figured forward, and I have my trapped arm on the outside of your body. And that's like the only defense that I have. And so like, since I did that enough times and have been triangled enough times, when I got triangled by somebody who was very high level, I was able to escape, was able to survive. And I was able to then try to turn it around. Man, if you want to just read some funny comments, the comments on that YouTube video, first of all, freaking IBJJF posts this video of me with Murillo. They don't post Josh McKinney versus Murillo Santana. The title of the video is like the best match from the Cincinnati Open. And it's me getting triangled for half of the match. Like that is what the best match. They were like pumped that my submission defense was so on point, right? And then on top of that, naming something that gave it more views than it needed to have. And then on top of it, like the number one comment is a guy, and he's like, that doesn't look like a Josh McKinney. You racist jerk. You jerk. I did actually comment and say that was one of the funniest comments I've ever read. I thought it was hilarious. But still, I'm going to beat that guy up one day. Not Murillo, the guy that posted that, that said that doesn't look like a Josh McKinney, which is true. You watch the first video that you've ever seen of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, and you're like, wait, is that the guy? Really? I've seen his dad. This doesn't add up. There's something going on. Sometime I'll introduce you guys to my mom and it'll make more sense. But yeah, that is all I have for you. Now ending this on some losses, ending this note on some different losses that I've experienced. But like, I guess that's also a testament to how losing is not that big of a deal. It's not something to cry about. It's not something to be super frustrated by. And don't get me wrong, I have days. Even recently, I'm, as I've told you guys, training hard, getting ready for, I have a few super fights coming up, but the next one is February 25th in St. Louis. If you guys are in the area, you should absolutely get tickets under my name. It's called the St. Louis Invitational. It's being put on by Blue Corner. But in that training, you're training against really tough guys that are there to push you. I'll have days where I don't do good, where I lose rounds, and I'm like, frustrated, right? Because you're trying to get ready for this match and you're like, I should be winning. But the truth is, those losses help me not lose the night up. Those losses are something for me to overcome mentally. When I've lost 3 or 4 times in a day and then I've got to do my next round, I'm a lot of times training the mental toughness side of it, saying, well, things aren't going my way. Can I still win? Can I still push myself? Can I still grind? Right? And maybe that's what I'm training. But that's enough for today. We'll go ahead and shift it over to Josh to give us the outro. And that is the episode. I'm going to talk about like how many losses, how many L's I've taken on this show. But shoot, I've taken a lot of losses on the show. That really, this is obviously doing a podcast is not doing jiu-jitsu, but there are definitely similarities. And the fact that you are going to get discouraged, I am going to get discouraged doing the podcast because it's something I care about. It's something that I want to be better at. But you will take big losses. You will have, like, for me with the podcast, I've had episodes I'm like, oh, this is the one. This is amazing. And it didn't even get a lot of listens. And even the few listens it got didn't get a lot of feedback. And maybe the feedback that it got, it wasn't good feedback. It wasn't positive feedback, right? And you take those as losses, and they can, in this space, in the podcast space, they can wear on you. You can let them define you, and you can kind of give up on yourself, give up on your podcast, give up on your show. But now for me, 175 episodes in, I'm getting to a point where I'm going, okay, no, this is part of my life. This isn't something that I'm going to give up on, even when I'm discouraged, even when my numbers aren't going up, which, as a matter of fact, they have been going up. They have been the podcast growth. I tell you guys this every time I really notice kind of trends. The trends of the last, maybe just the start of this year, January and continue, just the trend is showing that you guys are absolutely giving 5-star reviews. There is no other explanation to me. I have not, I tell you guys how bad I am at promoting things. I have not gotten any better at that, but the podcast is definitely growing by percentages, large percentages within like a month or two. And that doesn't really happen. That doesn't really, at least to me, that doesn't happen. And so I just want to tell you guys, as always, really appreciate you. If you have given a 5-star review on the show, I really appreciate that. If you haven't, well, I hate you. And I pretty much the only way you could ever be back in my good graces is to give me that 5-star review. And so I know that sounds aggressive, but it's true. It's true. Can't stand you if you haven't given the 5-star review. Unless you watch on YouTube. You can't give a 5-star review on YouTube. You can give a like and a share. If you're doing that, then I guess I still like you. But you still could just download Spotify and then search the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show just to give me that review, because you know how much I care about it. Because we're now friends if you do it, right? I care about you if you do it. Whew. Some episodes I just think, man, if I would have just ended that 2 minutes earlier, it would have been so much better. This is one of those rants. So I guess what we'll do is we will end this one. We will head out on this one. And thank you guys for listening to this one. Really excited to get to show you guys at least a couple square feet of what Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu Studios 2.0 looks like. Hopefully the sound is good on this. Hopefully you're like, oh man, I like the new mics too. They sound better. That would be cool. It's pretty cool for me to not have to be messing with it all the time. I always have to, the other mic I would always use, I didn't have a very good very good stand for it either. So I was constantly holding it, moving it, stopping episodes to adjust it. And hopefully we're over all that. Hopefully we're past all that. And now we're on to the things that like important and real podcasters, the problems that they deal with. Hopefully that's where we're going. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hope it was helpful for you. Hope you lose a little bit more. I hope you learn from your losses better than ever. And I hope, most importantly, that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.